Welcome to the 2021 Fanfare Launch into Cyberspace. Normally, you'd be visiting the High School of Art and Design's gymnasium, cafeteria, and other spaces around the building to interact and learn about the incredible creations of our young professionals, other creators and innovators in the community. You'd be seeing portfolio reviews. You would be involved in special seminars and workshops. You'd be seeing exciting contests and drawathons. Again, that would have been during a normal school year. The incredible challenges of the pandemic have forced our amazing PTA to take Fanfare and bring it online. So this is our first and hopefully only virtual Fanfare event. And with that said, we still have the vast majority of incredible experiences and learning opportunities for you to be a part of. We're incredibly proud of what our PTA and larger school community have put together and can't wait for you to join us throughout today and the next few days as each one offers unique and special events. Be safe, be well, most importantly, enjoy yourselves and be part of our community.
Hey guys, welcome to the second day of Fanfare New York City, where you'll be generating a tremendous amount of joy watching these workshops come to life with these amazing students and artists. If you can, please, which I know you can and you will, donate generously by going to Fanfare New York City, fanfarenyc.com. And also, if you can, text FFNYC to 44-321. We appreciate that very much. The segment that we'll be doing now is the Drawing Mountains workshop with Victoria Fabre. So join the fine artist as she leads a virtual classroom of our students through a landscape workshop. In this hands-on workshop, we'll be creating our own model landscape at home using crushed paper and then draw a fully rendered landscape in crayon and watercolor, moderated by our students, Maud, who is a cartooning junior, Willa, who is also a cartooning junior, Daniel, who did not write in the chat, but I also believe is a cartooning junior, and Julie and Miranda, who are sophomores in illustration. Thank you and enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, John, and thank you, the PTA of Art and Design High School. I'm so happy to be here. And thank you to all of the students who are joining us today and everybody who's watching the workshop. So my name is Victoria Fabre, and I'm a fine artist specializing in landscape. I'm also the owner and master teaching artist of Fabre Arts, an arts organization in New York that provides services to students and schools for art education. We've been doing a lot of remote classes during the pandemic, and we just had a batch of our students accepted to High School of Art and Design, so they'll be joining you next year. So we're very excited about that. The workshop I'm going to share with you today is actually a process that I've been using for a few years. So I'm a landscape painter. I love drawing mountains, as you can see behind me, but living in Queens, can't always see mountains out of my window, especially during the week. So I wanted to show you a few pieces that I've created, and these are all done using the process that we will be following today. So I'm just gonna go through these a little quickly. You can also spot some of these behind me on the wall. And these were all created in my studio using crayon and watercolor. So crayon is one of my favorite materials to use together with watercolor because it creates a wax resist. And just coming up to the last image here. Oops. So I'll just go back through these, and that's all of those images. If you could take that down, thank you. So why create mountains in the studio? You could draw mountains just from imagination, but as artists, we know that it's always best to be drawing from life, to have some type of reference. And creating your own model in the studio allows you to see the light conditions and really think about how might the light be hitting something outside? How might the shadows be raking across different valleys? And really exploring that. So even if you're using crazy wild colors like I sometimes do, it's really great to be able to reference something. So students, if you have a piece of typing paper handy, the first thing that we're going to do to create our model is crunch this paper up. All right, let's do it. Awesome. I'm glad we had a mute because that probably would have sounded like a thunderstorm. So great. I see, Julie, you've got colored paper. So any type of paper will do. And you'll see that once it's crunched. Daniel might be a little too small. We'll have to spread it out. Yeah, no, that's okay. Just pull it out. Okay. And then we are going to place our paper mountain in an area where we can see it clearly. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch my camera so you guys can see. I've got one made out of tracing paper set up already, and I'm going to add the one that I just created in front of it. All right, so we want to set up our mountains and of course play with it a little bit, you know, what looks good to you. Is that the good looking peak? I think. Let me try turning it around. Let's see. That's kind of cool. And I've actually got extras, so you can use as many as you'd like and set that up until it looks good to you as the landscape that you want to draw. Okay. So once you've kind of played with it and seen what looks interesting, let me just switch myself back. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is figure out what our composition is. And the best composition for tricking people into thinking that this is a landscape and not a piece of paper is going to crop out the paper edges. So what I like to do is make two L's with my hands and flip one over to create a viewfinder that I can look through. So it's almost like a director looking through a camera. And I'm going to look at my still life and place my hands in front of it and figure out what is the view that I want, what's going to be the most pleasing composition for me. Okay, so let me give you guys a moment to kind of figure that out. And of course, your rectangle that you're creating should be roughly the proportion of your paper that you'll be using for your watercolor. So give me a thumbs up when you feel like you've got a good landscape there. All right, Maud, Daniel, 2 thumbs up, and Miranda, awesome. All right. Excellent, Willa, great. So now we're ready to start drawing. So we want to get our materials ready. So we're going to be using watercolor and crayons today. I like to peel the wrappers off my crayons because that lets me use them sideways and really make use of the different techniques that are available to me with the crayon. All right. So I also will need watercolors. And this is a reminder, guys, that my work will be upside down as I'm drawing, but I'll flip it over to show you. So my first step is going to be with crayon, but I need to get my watercolors ready. So whenever you're going to use watercolors, and this is my favorite watercolor set, it folds up really compact and it's traveled all over with me. I take it to the real mountains a lot. My father gave it to me when I was 16. So if you take care of your supplies, they can last a very long time. So the first thing you want to do when you're getting ready to watercolor is to activate the watercolors. And that just means to wake them up. So we're going to put a drop of water on each of our colors. And try to do it by tapping the brush so that you don't have to touch the brush to the colors
and we're keeping our brush and our water as clean as we can for as long as we can. All right, so we're just gonna make sure that everything is woken up. I gotta get some more ultramarine blue. All right, and I always wake up, activate every single color, even if I don't use it very often. As you can see, I'm not, it's very clear which are my favorite colors here. All right, so we're just going to activate those watercolors so that they can get really nice and juicy while we do our other steps. All right, and you see I've already taped down my watercolor paper. There are two big reasons to tape down your watercolor paper. One is that it gives you those lovely white edges that everybody likes at the end when you peel them off. And the other is that it keeps your paper from forming waves as you're working. So when paper gets wet, the fibers expand, and that makes the surface wrinkle. By having it taped down, you can ensure that as it dries, you're keeping it flat. All right. So everybody's watercolors are activated? Yes? All right, we're gonna choose a color of crayon that has a bit of range. So pick a color on the dark side. And the reason for that is we want to be able to produce a variety of lines and values. So this purple crayon gets really, really dark. I can also make some really light lines. And if you haven't used crayon in a while, it's always a good idea to kind of test it out and see what you can do with this material. So crayons are pretty interesting to work with because of the way that their shape changes as you're drawing with them. So just take a moment on like a little scrap nearby to test out what are the different lines I can make with the crayon. What's the thinnest line? What's the thickest line? What's the lightest line? What's the darkest line? And I think you'll find that there's a huge range with this material, and especially some interesting techniques depending on how you hold it. So you'll see I am never holding, I never say never, but I am hardly ever holding my crayon the way I would hold a pen to sign my name. I tend to drop the crayon down and then pick it up with 2 fingers on one side and my thumb on the other, and I find that that lets me really twist and turn and make some cool lines. Okay. How the crayon's going? Awesome. So I know you guys, the students who are joining me, are expert artists already, but for anyone joining us who might be new to using crayons, I just want to very quickly go over how we can change our line weights with the crayon. So pressure. If we press harder, the crayon gets darker. If we press lighter, we make a lighter line. But because the crayon is making a mark through friction, it's being worn down as we draw. So the shape of the tool is changing as we're drawing. That leads to some really interesting effects, because if you rotate the crayon as you draw or change the angle that you're meeting the paper, you're going to change your line. And as the crayon wears down, I think you guys can see that mine's like a triangular prism at this point, you find corners on it. So you can really control where those lines are. The other mysterious thing that changes the quality of our line is actually speed. So if I draw a really quick line and then I try to make the same line slowly next to it, even if I'm really careful and try to rotate in exactly the same way and start and stop, it's never going to look exactly the same, because our viewers can notice when we've changed speed. It really changes the character of a line. So as you're drawing, keep in mind those 3 variables: pressure, angle of incidence, how do we meet the paper, and speed. All right, you guys ready to draw? Awesome. So the first thing I am going to do is actually draw the contour of the ridge of my mountain. So how is my mountain meeting the sky? All right, and I tend to look really closely at the mountain itself, and it almost becomes a blind contour for me. So I'm looking at the paper very little during this process. So I'm gonna go ahead and start that out. So I'm gonna pick a point to begin. And really create that ridge line for my mountain. Once you've got that done, then you can work into some of the shapes, keeping in mind your line weights. If there's an area where you're seeing a deep shadow in a valley, you can go ahead and start to provide some shading on that. And you guys also might have noticed that I use my whole arm when I'm drawing. So one thing that really helps out when you're drawing is to think about using your whole body. If you just use your wrist, your range of motion is only here. You can only make a short curved line. But if you're using your whole body, including your torso, moving back and forth, you can create a really big range. Okay, great. So how does 3 more minutes for drawing that sound, and then I can see what you guys have for your drawings? Sounds good? Awesome. All right, excellent. So let's take a look at how those pieces are going. Who wants to hold theirs up and show us? Daniel, can we get a spotlight on Daniel's piece?
Oh, and Miranda, that looks awesome. Those look great. Ah, Daniel, I love how yours has like a big canyon in the center right. I think that's a really beautiful composition. Daniel, do you want to unmute and share anything about your piece?
Uh, uh, yeah, I like the canyon too. I didn't even realize that the canyon was there until like I started drawing. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation. I find too that this process is actually kind of meditative because you feel like you're traveling inside of that paper you're observing.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Great work, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And Miranda, we had your piece as well. Oh, wow. So yours is more zoomed out, like a flatter mountaintop. I love the shading that you've got there. Would you like to unmute and share a little bit about the process?
I really liked doing the shading because now that you know the structure, you can relate it to an actual mountain from the paper. So that was fun.
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. Thanks for sharing, Miranda. It looks beautiful. Can't wait to see it as it continues. Who else would like to share their work in progress? Maud.
So I mean, mine was mainly just a singular mountain. It was a lot of me like drawing lines and then being like, oh wait, I should probably shade these in. So like I did that, and then I started kind of making up some lines where I was like, oh, this might be better placed here. I mean, it still doesn't like totally look like a mountain to me, but I think it's getting there.
Oh, I think it absolutely does. It reminds me of the Matterhorn, actually. It looks like a super famous mountain.
Great.
I think it's really beautiful. And, you know, you made a good point. Sometimes we get lost in the crinkles of the paper, and that's okay, because since we have a stock of like what mountains should look like in our head, some of those points where you kind of have to fake the way a valley and a ridge connect are totally okay. And they end up making your work more interesting. Excellent. Would anyone else like to share in this round? We will have another round of sharing. Julie, oh, actually everybody wants to share. Julie, I think I saw you pull up your drawing first. Oh, very cool. I love the red. And Julie, yours has like a really nice sense of depth with ridges closer to us and then working their way back into the depths of the composition and up the page. Would you like to share a little bit about your process?
Hi. For my process more, I would like look at my paper mountain, study it for a bit, and then go straight back to my piece and just start forming it. But as I go, I kind of just not looked at the paper as much and started thinking of more details and how all the unusual mountains, you have some closer, you have some more farther away. So I wanted to add more depth in that sense.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's really beautiful. I can't wait to see a few more touches in like the close foreground. Like, what are those tiny details of like little rocks and crags that we're seeing in the very front? It's beautiful. Great work, Julie.
Thank you.
Willa. Oh, wow. I love your hatching.
Thank you. I think, well, the paper's obviously kind of big. I thought I had a smaller pad, but apparently not. But I really like how the higher points on the mountain. Well, it does kind of look like a mountain, kind of like a softer one, and like you can tell like how the harsher shadows like fade into like pure highlights. And I don't know, like I always kind of like that of like harsher points and softer points. So it was fun, like trying to get that aspect.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you know, even if your paper model ran out, you know enough about how to draw a mountain to extend that across the page if you want to stretch it out. Awesome. Great work, everybody. So for our next step, we're actually going to add some highlights to this piece. And the highlights are going to be close to invisible because they won't pop out until we show our watercolor. So you can grab a white crayon, or I very often use this lime green color that Crayola has for my highlights, or a white China marker, which is almost the same thing as a crayon. And we're just going to add the very brightest highlights so that when we come back in with our wash later, we've got a few areas reserved. Okay, so let's take a look back at the artwork. So sometimes to see those highlights, I mean, I know Willa, you said that in your model you can see super bright highlights. My model, I see some very bright highlights, but because my studio wall is white, sometimes they kind of blend together. So I find that a good strategy for me is to squint my eyes a little bit, and then I see the darkest darks and the brightest brights a lot more clearly. Don't do it a lot, because my mom says if you squint a lot, your face will stay that way. So just a little bit. But I think I'm going to start with this lime green color. And I'm just going to put a few areas where I want these like really strong highlights. And like I said, they're almost invisible. You can barely see them, but they're going to become really apparent in your next step. So these are those big planes of color, of bright highlight here. And Julie, this might be a really nice strategy for you to add detail in the foreground and to differentiate it from the mountains that are really far away. All right, and I've got these yellow ones, but I'm also, just so I can show you guys later, going to add some super, super bright ones as well, like some areas of white. And I think here, and perhaps some touches in these areas. All right, so this part of the process should be a little bit quicker than the shadows, because the shadow and gesture took us longer because we had nothing on the page. Now we have reference. We've already got some areas here that tell us there's going to be highlight in this area, shadow in this area. And of course, if as you're working, you see that you want to touch something up with your other crayon, you can pick that up and add it back in. Right, and always looking back at my piece. So we're just going to spend 2 minutes on that. And I know you guys know this from school, but a quick reminder that every once in a while, hold up your paper at arm's length so you can see your artwork at the distance that people usually view it. Because as artists, we tend to work like this, and we're way too close to our work, and that sometimes changes the values and the line weights. So remember to, every once in a while, step back, look at it at arm's length. Think about how close do you stand to an artwork in a museum. Sometimes you try to zoom in really close and then the guards yell at you, but usually your first view is at about 1.5 meters, like maybe a meter, okay? So in 2 minutes, we'll move on to our next step, to our watercolors. Awesome. So now that you've got your highlights mapped out, it's time to mix up your watercolors. So when we are working with watercolor, the most important thing is having our brush in good shape. So this is a reminder for the people at home, because I know my students know already. We do not leave our brush in the water, because then it gets a bad haircut, a bad hairstyle, because it'll be like this. It'll have bedhead, like when you wake up and your hair is all off in one direction. So we always want to dip our brush in the water and then leave it flat on the table. When we dip our brush in the water, we can use the side of the cup to actually kind of style that brush to a nice point. So we want a good point on our brush. The brush has a little belly where it holds the water, and then it has a tip where you can paint. So this is a size 10, but to be honest with you guys, my go-to brush is my size 12, and I will use a size 12 even when I'm drawing in my tiny little sketchbook that I take with me. So a good size 12 that makes a point can be really helpful. When you are setting up your watercolors, you want to always mix on your palette. And since watercolor can be reactivated, you can leave your favorite colors on the palette. My favorite color is actually purple green. So I'm gonna go ahead and use that. I'm going to mix some of the phthalo green that I've got here. And I'm picking up color from my palette and then, from the color well, and then I'm putting it down on my palette. I want to grab some reddish purple to mix with this, but I don't want to get all of that green on there. So I'm just gonna swish my brush around, remembering to always help style it into a nice point. And then I'm going to pick up some color from over here and mix it together. Okay, so I'm going to create a fairly dark color to work with here, because the first thing I want to do is get a really nice shadow on those mountains. So I've mixed a pretty dark color. Your color doesn't have to be as dark. It really depends on what you're thinking in terms of climate, location for your mountains. I'm going to show you guys just a few others that I've done. So I've got this one that I was working on a couple of days ago. This is a frequent color palette that I use. I think you can see that in the other screen as well. And actually, if you guys could put the other mountains on screen again, my shared screen, I'll show you guys a few different color palettes really quick as the students are choosing their colors. I guess we can't, the other shared screen isn't coming up. That's okay. So pick a color palette that works. I think I'm going to do this inky color and possibly a few more areas of greens. So in watercolor, we are controlling our colors and values by how much water is mixed with the pigment. So I have it mixed on my palette, and then I can come to my piece, which I'm now going to flip back right side up. And I'm going to start with my darkest darks. My darkest darks already have some purple on them because I drew them before, but I'm going to come in and add even more to them. So really thinking about, where do I want to add this color? And I like to be really loose at this stage. You'll notice that I hold my brush behind the area where the wood gets wider. That actually helps you to have better balance with it. So you see that wherever you had crayon, it's resisting the watercolor, because wax and water are not friends. So the watercolor actually cannot stick.
So now that I've got my dark areas, I think I want to mix myself something a little more greenish for some other areas to just add some more color here. So going back to my palette, controlling the amount of water I'm using, and since my palette is white, I can get a pretty good preview of what my color is going to look like. So I'm going to start adding some greens, and if you ever feel like you overdid it, grab a paper towel and you can blot. Don't rub the surface of the paper because you don't want to lift up those fibers. I'm going to make the middle row of mountains a little bit greener. Okay, so let's add color for a few more minutes, and then let's check in with all of the students at 10:40. Okay, so try not to have your surface get too sopping wet because the paper will buckle and things will start running into each other. So we're going to check in about 2 minutes. When you're watercoloring, you don't always want to lift it up because it might drip down. So what I actually do is usually stand up and walk away from my table a little bit so I can see it at that normal viewing distance. Okay,
So let me flip mine over so you guys can see where it is right now. So I've got watercolor all over all of my mountains with the exception of the ones that are furthest away. And that's because I'll show you guys that in the next technique. Those are so far away that I want them to have an atmospheric perspective over them. So I'm actually going to paint them in with the same color that I use for the sky for my negative space. So let's take a look at how our students are doing. And if it's too wet to lift up, if you're on a laptop, you can tilt down the webcam like I do. Willa, can we get a spotlight on Willa? Oh, I love your color palette.
Thank you.
Very cool. So how are you finding the reaction between the watercolor and the drawing underneath?
I actually really like it because since I use like hatching and cross hatching for most of the shadows, when I put on the watercolor, it kind of just like faded out. So, and it protected the highlights as well. So I really like how it, again, like I was talking about the shadows before, it like you can see the contrasts a lot better.
Awesome. So it's definitely building up texture for you. I mean, it looks great. And I love how you chose colors that were analogous to the ones that you had used with your crayon. It's looking really beautiful. Great work, Willa.
Thank you.
Awesome. Who else would like to share? Everybody else is shy. Miranda. Let's get a spotlight on Miranda. Wow. Ooh, I love that you're using those warm tones in the in some of the valleys. It makes for a really beautiful effect. That's gorgeous. How are you finding the reaction between the watercolor and the crayon?
I was really surprised by it at first, but I like the texture that it gives.
Yeah, it makes some interesting textures. With your piece, I think that you might get an interesting effect if you use a light wash in the foreground in the area of the painting that's closest to us, because your focus is really on those peaks and on like the distant mountain ranges kind of stacking there. So I think that to wash out the foreground as if it's just like a smooth slope that's not really part of our focus area is going to really tie together that composition. Excellent work, Miranda.
Thanks.
Great. Who else? These are so impressive, guys. All right, I'm gonna assume that, oh, Julie, let's see. Let's get the spotlight on Julie. Wow, beautiful. I love how you've got that light bluish green in the foreground and then our eye goes straight to those reddish peaks. It's almost as if we're at the very early morning or late evening where like the sun's red rays are just exactly catching on those ridges. It's really beautiful, and the complementary use of red and green I think is giving a really nice effect. How did you find the interaction between the different media?
At first when I was doing like the more darker tones, a little bit the crayons kind of disappeared a bit, but as I do like the more lighter tones of it, you can see how like they're kind of like fighting each other, like, hey, no, I'm going to be on top, not you. And I would keep on like using like a little bit of more water on the on the paint colors so that it comes out with a lighter tone on it. And that's what you see on this mountain over here, how it's light and then it gets dark on certain sides, because I wanted to like show like some areas are more lighter than the others.
Yeah, that's such a great way to describe it. It is like the pigments are fighting each other, like trying to assert themselves more strongly. And definitely when you have more concentration of pigment in the watercolor, it fills in those gaps in between the crayon and can kind of quiet the crayon down and tell it like, no, it's not your turn right now. It's time for the watercolor to shine. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent work, Julie. So guys, I am going to show you now some strategies for doing the negative space. And then in the next round, we'll start with the students that we didn't see on this check-in. So I think I can I might be able to pull this off upside down. No, I want to see it. It should be the most comfortable for the artist, right? So I do sometimes use like, oops, I'm dripping water on my own painting. I do sometimes use like crazy unexpected colors for the sky, but I think that today I'm actually just going to do a blue. And this is something that you can adjust now if you feel like it might be interesting. I have a mountain range all the way in the distance that I lightly drew with the purple and then kind of raked a white crayon or China marker across. And now that you've seen kind of how the crayons react, you can try one of those effects. So atmospheric perspective is when the objects that are furthest from us appear bluer and lighter. It's that effect when you look at mountains and it seems like there's a fog on the ones that are the very farthest from you. So I want that effect here. I'm going to start with a darker wash at the top of my sky. And I'm going to pull that downwards with more and more water as I approach the edge. And when I get up to these, I've got that white crayon there that is resisting the color completely. So I'm going to really follow my contours and move my arm around so that I can get the best edge as I'm painting there. I think I might have gotten a little too dark over here. Let's pull that water across. Okay. And so you see I'm getting that resist with the white crayon. I can also amplify that by coming in and picking up even more of that blue. And actually, now that I look at this from a distance, I think I can go more intense with this blue at the very top of the screen, at the very top of the painting. Okay. So think about what atmospheric conditions you want in your piece. Is it a stormy day? I'm making mine a little bit overcast. I guess I'm inspired by the super balmy weather in New York today. But you can do a sunset or even an imaginary sky. It could be a sky on another planet. And think about how that negative space is going to make the different ridges in your landscape really pop. Great, so let's spend just about 2 more minutes finishing up our composition so that we have time at the end to look carefully at everybody's work. Okay, so finishing touches. And remember to step away from your piece to see it at a usual viewing distance. Okay, so how did those go? It looks like you guys need one more minute. I see brushes still moving. Okay. Extra minute. Who's ready to share first? Miranda, let's see. Wow, that's beautiful. I love the gradation in the sky between the blues and the pinks. That's really stunning. I think you could maybe bring in some of that blue in the foreground as reflected light, because it seems like your mountain either has snow or has these very like slick rock surface that might be reflecting some of the conditions of the sky. Does that sound good? So how did you feel about the process now that you're almost done?
I really like doing the sky and contrasting the sky with the mountains. So that was nice. And the shape and shading was fun to do.
Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I can't wait to see this piece totally finished. Awesome work, Miranda. Who else would like to share? Maud. Wow, that is a dramatic sky.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Maud.
Yeah, I like.
Can you share a little bit about your process?
Well, I guess with picking the colors, I kind of wanted to do a blue and purplish sort of thing. And with the sky, I originally had one color, but it like kept on being messed up. So I was like, why don't I just try and do a sunset of sorts? Because that seems like a fun idea. And then with the mountain, it was a lot of like, I did a darker color and then I did a lighter color. And I was like, why don't I just take that darker color back in and put it in some other places and like play around with it more? And so I did that. So yeah, it's a lot of.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love how your process took you back and forth between different colors and pigments. I love how dramatic that like rising peak is in your composition. What are you thinking for the foreground, for like the parts closer to us? Or are you thinking of cropping it? Because you could also make it more rectangular.
I think I may do like a dark green of sorts or like a dark blue, either or. I think probably a dark green. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay, cool. And you can always set up a new paper mountain model to put in front if you feel like you ran out of model and you need like smaller mountains for the ones that are closer to the viewer. Excellent work, Maud. Can't wait to see that one when it's totally complete. Fantastic. Who's next? Daniel. Wow, I love the yellow highlights and the green sky. This is such a cool composition. And it looks like you've got a, are we seeing like a moonrise or a sunrise in the top right corner? It's beautiful the way that you've captured the environment of the atmosphere. Can you share quickly a little bit about your process, Daniel?
The process, I wasn't really thinking that much about the process. Usually I'd go like light to dark, but I was going back and forth. I really just enjoyed like slapping on colors to the canvas. I think that's what like got me into it, and I kind of forgot about the process, but yeah.
No, but that's perfect. That is the process. I mean, I think it's wonderful when you work with the crayon for shadow and highlight. It already gives you permission to bounce back and forth, right? Because we just went from dark to light, and now we're going back to dark. And I think the way that you applied color throughout that composition is really fantastic. All right, so let's get the last shares, and then I would love to get everybody on screen, and we can all hold up our images. Willa, wow. I love the way that orange like spreads up the page and that contrast with the green. That's beautiful. Fantastic composition, great colors. All right, and Julie, can we take a look at yours? Wow, that yellow in the background is really intense. I love the way that it's like moving up and we've got the lighter gradient at the very top. And I like how you're adding the alternating blue, green, and red areas throughout the composition. It's really beautiful the way that it's like stacking in perspective. Excellent work, guys. This is fantastic. Can we get everybody on screen? All right, so how about we all hold up our work? Amazing. This is the closest we get to a group crit, right? Great work, guys. Amazing. Does anyone have any closing comments about the process? We've got about 2 minutes left. Also, I wanted to share with you guys that all of the students that are with us right now, and also anybody that's following along at home, you can post your artwork and tag hashtag Paper Mountain Challenge. And we've been collecting a lot of the pieces. So we've got a lot of students around the world who have done projects like this already. And we'd love to get your projects added and share to our virtual gallery of all the different mountains drawn at home. So excellent work. And I'm so proud of all of the students. I'm so impressed with the work that you guys have made. Would anyone else like to share just some closing comments in our last 2 minutes? You guys also did a fantastic job of speeding up and doing this in a reduced amount of time for television. Excellent work. Do you guys think this is something that you might repeat? That it got you thinking about strategies for the future? Yeah. Cool. I also work with an architect who teaches with me at Fabre Arts. His name's Andrew Lamb, and he sometimes makes little paper and cardboard building models and puts them in landscapes. So he'll make drawings of little buildings as well. So that's another way that you can take this project. So hello, Miguel.
Hey there, everybody. We're at the under 1 minute mark. So I want to thank everyone. You folks all did fantastic. Victoria, this is your second time with us, I believe. Yeah. And every time it's a pleasure. And thank you so much. There's her links to her different Instas and her website. And the kids, everyone should jot down these kids' names and then check back in a few years. All of these kids are going to be going on to big things, as we all can obviously see here. So we're going to cut this out. The next stream is about to start in just a few seconds. And thanks again, everyone. Victoria, thank you again.
Thank you so much for painting with me. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for teaching. Bye.
Thank you.
So here we are. We're going to do a quick little, again, just a little slideshow and discuss why we're doing what we're doing. So I'll get it started. And
it's been such an amazing weekend. The professionals that we've met through Fanfare have been extraordinary. They gave their time, and they made it possible to interact with our amazing students. This is a fundraiser, though, and so we really want to make sure that people who have enjoyed this content all weekend are really going through and making a donation to help our students. Our students are the best of the best. They are from every part of New York City, from the Bronx to Staten Island to Brooklyn, Queens, and they come to school in the heart of Manhattan. And they need our help. They need our help to get art supplies. That's a big, need that you don't think about. Everyone is not working digitally. And if they are working digitally, they need the next Wacom tablet, or they need the next application. And that's what the PTA funding can give to them. Oh, there's John. Hi, John.
Hello.
Hey, John.
Sorry about that.
That's all
it's
right.
okay.
I'm so excited you were having a great time with the cosplayers.
Oh, they were so much fun. We could have talked for another like 2 hours. It would have been great.
And what was great too was one of those cosplayers was an alumni, and
Yes.
she was talking about how much the school meant to her and her ambitions. She is now a working illustrator working with Nickelodeon on a project, I think, also working
Netflix.
Netflix. Thank you.
Yep.
And so that's the kind of student, these ambitious students who want to work in the creative field. This is a great slide showing some items and what you can provide if you can donate today. A studio easel is something that any artist who works on canvas can use.
The illustration folks,
That is expensive, and we would love to be able to provide that. And so, could you make a donation today of $125?
We have our guests here are going to be talking about comics, and there's like India ink, this special, the pens, there are all these little accoutrements that they all need in order to get the job done. So,
and you don't buy it once. You buy the easel once, but ink, paint, paper, you go through it. If you're in school and you have to be constantly creating, you're going through it, and so it's a constant need. And we want to be there for our students, the PTA.
You had a great story. I don't want you to.
Oh, yes. Well, I met with an illustrator, or it was an aspiring cartoonist, but he's in 9th grade. He's amazing. He was showing me an ink drawing, and it was this elaborate ink drawing with all this cross-hatching and everything on it. And he said, I couldn't finish it the way I wanted it to because I ran out of ink in this ink pen, which was like a special ink pen. And I just thought, wow, if that isn't a metaphor for what we're doing, let's keep that ink flowing. Let's let him realize the beautiful creation he was making, and let him be, the next cartooning star. And you can do it.
Yeah. As we were saying, even $1 helps. So anything helps. John, this is here. We rack this up. It's time for that radio voice.
Yeah, here we go, guys. If you can, please donate to fanfarenyc.com, or you can go and donate through a text message, because we're super savvy like that. You can text FFNYC to 44-321. Give us all the money, everything you got in your wallet. Go through your kids' piggy banks. They don't need it yet. When they go to the the High School of Art and Design, then they can save up. But for now, give us what you got.
Yes. Go ahead.
I think there was one more slide that we were going to just talk about merchandise, because John had a T-shirt on that was very special the last few days. I think you had to wash it. Now I understand.
That's funny. I actually did. I was like, I can't do it.
It was like the smellometer. There was no, you couldn't do it. But
2 days I had it.
But we know people are such fans of Fanfare, and we have some merchandise with our mascot on it, which was created by one of our students, Lang Mansunu. And I just want to make sure that everyone who wants to could buy it. It's on our website, fanfarenyc.com, and go there, buy whatever. They're great. I have a T-shirt. I'm excited. My daughter has a sweatshirt.
There's the mascot up in the top right.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So the all this merchandise is available through tomorrow, but then it's not available. So please do go and get yours today.
There's a gate. You gotta get there before the gate closes. And
Exactly.
then we do want. It's still, if you go and you donate, certain amounts get you some of these merchandise too. Am I not right? I'm sorry.
No,
if
you're
I'm-
right. You're
Yes.
right. I think it is, if you donate $125, we will give you one of these awesome tote bags.
Look at that.
We also have little limited edition button packs. If you donate $50, we will give you a limited edition button pack. We don't have this pictured because it's not for sale. That's a special gift just for our friends who donate more than $50.
And if you donate $1,000, Joanne, myself, and Miguel will come to your house.
Oh, I thought you were
I-
gonna throw in that dog.
Yeah.
and the dog.
And the dog.
We're just giving stuff away.
Right.
Time, bodies.
We'll do it. I'll get on the call and talk to you. Talk you through that, writing that $1,000 check or making that donation. But
Talk me
One
through
more
it.
zero.
thank you.
One more
That's
zero.
right. Exactly.
good. Right.
Exactly. Thanks.